AATBirds Weekly Report is the Eagle news, notes, and analysis you need.
Quick, he's going to go. Putting him in the shot, and they stop him again. So back. He looks, fires for the end zone, intercepted, the 20, the 10, the 5, touchdown, Matt Ware, midfield, he's going to go, Deshaun Jackson, he steps up, he's hit, and falls forward, and he fumbles the football, and the Eagles have it, it's gone, and the Eagles win.
It's all birds, all the time.
And welcome to a special edition of the AATBirds Weekly Report. We are going to break down the draft. The Eagles in the NFL had their draft Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So we thought coming Sunday night to talk about the Eagles draft as a whole and everything seemed to be better than waiting until Wednesday or Thursday.
I can't wait.
I myself, Johnny Lecca, is joined by Chip, as always. And we are joined, special guest, Gayle Saunders from 4th and John at Eagle Sessions. Hey, how's everybody doing?
So good. Gayle, first off, I'm so excited to see you. Johnny, I know the draft is like your baby. I mean, it's so rewarding when you look at what the Eagles put together in this draft, because if we were hated before, how can they not hate us now? The rich got richer. We replaced positions with younger, cheaper players. I mean, it's just, it seemed to be a hit every step of the way. It's beautiful.
I think it was Christmas, or early Christmas present. I feel like the Nintendo 64 kid. I feel like we got exactly what for me, Jalen Carter was a guy that I was highly in love with the player. I wasn't sure that we were going to get him. He was my move-up target. In fact, we moved up. I was like, this is part of the script. I was like, Nolan Smith was my guy. That was my second tier. Like, I'd be okay with if we're going to stick to the line. The fact that we got him at 30 makes it even sweeter. I think I lost my voice. Getting a lineman was part of my script. I was like, I didn't know exactly where Stoutland wanted to go, but he got his dude. And Sidney Brown is a guy who I've been talking about since the Senior Bowl, and he was a prospect I identified that would be perfect for the Eagles, and then they got him. So, and then day 3 was just all over the place with Ringo just like falling where he fell, and then you sleep for a second. Then we have DeAndre Swift, and then the Tanner McKee was like, all right, there's a developmental quarterback. Moro Jomo, developmental D tackle. Okay. Great draft. A+. I'm good right now.
Yeah. And I want to start off with Thursday night and with what the Eagles did. So the Eagles sit at 10, and you start to see the board falling and starting to fall their way. Bijan goes at number 8, and then Jalen Carter is still on the board. And what the Eagles do is they call Chicago and they trade up to number 9. They give up only a 2024, I believe it was a 4th round pick, I think, if I'm not mistaken. 4th round pick to move up that spot to lock it in and get Jalen Carter. And
that's crazy.
My favorite reaction, I don't know if you guys happen to see any of the Bleacher Report stuff with Micah Parsons. And AJ Brown. And how he was like, this isn't fair, and then the Nolan Smith. Like, I thought Nolan Smith would go in the 18 to 24 range, around there, just because of his tools. I know he was coming off of an injury, and his production, if you look at his stats, which I think some people take a little too much when they just look at stats for college. Oh, he didn't produce enough. But you have to look at the context of it. He was playing on probably arguably one of the best defenses of all time when you look at all the players that they rotated in. Plus, just because someone doesn't rack up all the sacks doesn't mean that they're not any good. There is a player on the Eagles roster. They drafted it in 2017, Derek Barnett, that broke Reggie White's sack record. So it doesn't always translate to the league. And again, to me, Nolan Smith is that freak of, athleticism and everything that he brings to the table. And you have a player like Hassan Reddick, who is almost a clone of when he came out, a guy who is, they say undersized, but can, rush the passer and certain things like that. It's perfect that he is on the team with the Eagles. And again, Gayle you mentioned it before we came on. It just seems like with this draft and a couple of these picks early on, Thursday and Friday, it's almost like some players may redshirt, if you want to call it.
Oh yeah, they are,
not play as much, and then when the veterans leave, the next guys will come in. The Eagles have done that the past couple of drafts.
I think if you look at it in totality, like the guys that they're bringing into this program are from Georgia. I mean, there is if you watch all their interviews, you listen to the way they speak highly about the next man, the way that Nolan Smith lights up a room, the way that Jalen Carter looks at Nolan Smith. There's a brotherhood there. Bringing that brotherhood and cultivating the next culture in this locker room is very important. Brandon Graham is going to be out of here. Fletcher Cox is going to be out of here soon. Kelsey's going to be out of here soon. But you're cultivating these guys from great programs like Bama and the Georgia Bulldogs. So I feel like, the fact they get to learn from, I work at Nickelodeon, but there's Nick Jr. So we have a Hassan Reddick. We have a Hassan Reddick Jr. and Nolan Smith. We've got Fletcher Cox. We got a Fletcher Cox Jr. and Jalen Carter, maybe even better. And then it just, you got Cam Jurgens, who's making his he's trying to get on the field. But again, besides that, the competition that they're bringing to the locker room, there's so many dudes here. There are so many talented prospects in the building, and if you don't want to compete, well, guess what? These younger dudes that are coming in have learned to compete for years at Georgia, or the guys that like Devontae Smith, who wanted to go to Bama to compete. There's a certain kind of dude that wants to go to Bama knowing that you will sit for 2 years before you get to sniff the field. If you're not, the crazy 5-star, but you're going to come in and compete. I think a lot of those guys have that.
Yeah, and I think that,
I just want to,
go ahead.
Carter is better than Davis. Carter is, if the
Carter
Bears
was almost the number one overall pick.
If the Bears would have stayed at 1 and Carter didn't have any of those, as they say, character issues, red flags, he would have been the number 1 pick, in my opinion. He was by far one of basically the best player on many other of the draft boards, many of the top analysts draft boards. He was a top 5 talent. Looking at the draft overall as a whole, it was very clear that Howie Roseman came in with a clear-cut game plan. And there was a time with Howie Roseman where he was trying to be the smartest person in the room. And he was, you got your Jalen Reagors. Why? Because he had this level of intangibles and it didn't work out. And he tried to overthink it. And I think that now that he's settling in, look, we know that Howie Roseman is brilliant. We know that he is a fierce trader and negotiator and does all those things. We know that about him. But now he's also going to hey, these are the best players and I'm going to go out of my way to get them. You mentioned, Gayle, the fact of there's a brotherhood. Not only is there a brotherhood, I mean, you look at when they drafted Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean was in the room. Nakobe Dean was at Smith's draft party. So we got a potential number 1 overall pick for nothing. We got a first-round pick late in the round. We got more. That Georgia defense over those 2 years where, we also got Dean and Davis was a record-setting, groundbreaking defensive program. And we went, you know what? Just give us those players and we'll bring them here. So much so that I don't know if you guys have seen this, but if you go onto the Philadelphia Eagles Twitter page, the actual Twitter page, the yellow checked one, not blue because you can buy those, the yellow checked one, they are now known as the Phila Georgia Bull Eagles or the Georgia Delphia Eagle Dogs.
Like the Philadelphia Eagles changed their Twitter handle because of what they did. Like they knew what they were doing. And this Eagles team is now, like Gayle said, primed because we did have so many players in this organization for all these years. You know, your Kelce's, your Johnsons, who your Brandon Grahams, your Fletcher Coxes, these guys who have been incredible for all these years. And part of the reason why there was a drop off towards the end of Andy Reid and going into Chip Kelly and into Doug Peterson is because we didn't have their replacements ready to go. That is not going to be a problem. We're going to put Cam Jurgens on the line this year and then shift him over to when it is time. You've already got, you still need to potentially get a replacement for Lane Johnson because at some point he's going to go. But like a guy like Miles Sanders, right? Miles Sanders had a very successful season last year. They went, you know what? We're not going to pay him that kind of money. We have $2 million invested in the entire room. And we have got guys who were towards the top of their fantasy. We had guys who were going to score touchdowns. We've got giant killers. Our offense is primed to be successful. Our defense, which was already exceptional last year, got younger and more devastating, and they don't need to worry about at this point, oh, where's this guy going to go? I don't know. We haven't played together. These guys have all played together. I mean, it was a perfect draft.
The other thing that I did see is somebody, mention, hey, you can't just draft all these players from the same school. It's not always a good recipe. And then, I mentioned, so back in the early 2000s, one of the other great defenses or teams in general were the Miami Hurricanes. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me you wouldn't take 5 players from
easily that
defense, like Vince Wilfork, Jonathan Vilma, Antrell Roll,
2004 draft or something.
Like people, I don't get why, they you can't just draft all these. They're basically one of the greatest defenses
Why not?
of all time.
Why can't you?
Yeah, I mean, again,
why can't you?
The people that are saying it don't really even study what they're saying. I mean, some people just take hot takes and run with it, but if you actually go and watch the film, watch the traits, it does make sense. It does. It makes sense.
And I think that, the Eagles fan base specifically has a sour taste of the idea of the one school feeding pool because of the Chip Kelly Oregon Eagles that happened a couple years ago. But the problem is that was a scheme that was designed to only work in college. And you saw it be successful offensively for a while, but then when Chip Kelly refused to make adjustments, the team looked bad, and then he got rid of all of his playmakers. This isn't that. This Georgia team, and I think, your Georgias and your Alabamas, they could compete in the NFL now against some of those weaker teams. We say that all the time.
Yeah.
So why? I mean, it's a funnel to that pro style offense, that pro style defense. And now with a new defensive coordinator, you're not necessarily worried about these guys not knowing how each of them plays and their strengths and their weaknesses. You're just implementing a new system.
Yeah. It's funny because like a couple years ago, I had been forwarding around this like coaches clinic. You can find it on YouTube, but it's basically Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann, who was the defensive coordinator for the Bulldogs, who actually got interviewed for the defensive coordinator position. But if you go back and watch that coaching clinic, it's awesome. It's amazing. I was sending that to a lot of people. And I was like, look, I wouldn't be surprised if Howie is like sitting here trying to recreate this Georgia defense or implement some of these part of the scheme to the Eagles. Like, and then all of a sudden we get Jordan Davis, and then we get Nakobe Dean, and then now we have Jalen Carter, we have Nolan Smith, we have Keely Ringo, and I'm just like, this man. And then you interviewed Schumann. So, I mean, if they're trying to figure – and the whole premise of that clinic was like how they wanted to transform their defense and how they wanted to bring pressure, how they wanted to move from a 4-3 to a 3-4 and have their defense have different levels to it where they couldn't tell where the pressure was coming from. So in the, regular, 4-man front, you're like, all right, this is where pressure's coming from. Are the Eagles in their older system, were they showing their hand too early? now with this, they're talking about their front, how they had to change it, and how they had to they talk about the body types, and it's very intriguing. Go check it out on YouTube. I mean, and then you start looking at what they're doing now. You're like, okay, man, they're implementing some of this stuff, so it's nice to see.
Yeah, and for me, like looking at what they're doing, and then if you go ahead and look at on Friday, then they go ahead and they get the offensive lineman from Alabama, Tyler Steen. He was previously at Vanderbilt, played offensive tackle, never played guard, but if you really watch him, and especially at Senior Bowl, I know there was a lot of people talking about that. I think he could fit in. He could battle Juergens for that right guard spot if they don't bring a veteran in or whatever they do. I think you can see him battling Juergens for that spot. He played the thing. If you're playing left tackle in the SEC for Alabama, I think you can, you have to give it to him to do that. So he could be kind of that offensive lineman that can play guard, but can also be a swing type of player. Like they like those kind of guys. The Jack Driscolls, those type of players that are able to play a number of things. And again, that's what Stout's here for. Stoutland is by far the best offensive line coach. So you get that. And then I know Gayle mentioned it, talking about basically the pick right after, because they got the 66 selection after they did a trade with Houston and moved to 65 from 62. They got the 66 selection because of the whole tampering thing with Jonathan Gannon. Maybe we can get into that after we talk about the draft, our feelings on that. They go with safety Sidney Brown. And so watching him, a lot of people talk about the other safeties, the other corner, Devin Witherspoon is the big name you always hear. To me, Sidney Brown kind of reminded me of Bob Sanders. So, my one cousin's a huge Colts fan. So I watched a lot of Colts game with him, when Bob Sanders was, of course, roaming the defense. And I just feel that Sidney Brown's going to be a type of player that's going to be loved here because of what he does on the field. To me, he's a lot better version of what Marcus Epps was doing. What's your feeling, Gayle? Because I know he was one of your guys that you liked.
It was funny because I went down to the Senior Bowl, and the guy I'm looking to, scout Devin Witherspoon. I was like, I'll drive in 17 hours to Alabama for this. Come to find out he's not gonna show up, and I'm like, okay, all right. We got some other Illinois dudes here, and then as I go at this, as you go to the Senior Bowl, it's so amazing that you get to sit next to other scouts that are scouting from all over the country. So you meet these guys and you see the randos with their notebooks, and you just start gathering information as you talk to other scouts. So who do you like? Who do you like? Who do you like? And the common denominator was Sidney Brown. Everyone was like that kid from Illinois he's running all over the field, making plays all over the field. The dude was ripped up. Everyone was like, this guy is making everyone want to go to the gym right now. Like he was just, and they mentioned they wanted to see him play deep safety, and that's where they were impressed with him at the Senior Bowl. The thing about him, again, there's a mental makeup that I like to see in players. I go back and I can watch any interview. I'll find anything. I'll find high school interview. I'll find anything I can find on a guy. I'll watch everything. So I'm sitting there making my notes. I'm like, this guy seems like a guy who's come from tough. His family was homeless at one point. Yep. His mother sends him and his brother from Canada to try and get a scholarship. So these guys leave their family, go to Florida, end up, getting scholarships. They went through all this hardship. And the mother was sick, and there's a why for a lot of players. Some players don't have their why is different than other players, but when you see where these players come from, and why they do it, like this dude has a why. Like the Eagles have like a Red Star player, and that exemplifies a person who is an Eagle player through and through, who plays the game the right way. This goes into football intelligence, practice player. Like he's a tone setter for his own team, being captain. But I think he's a tone setter, and like these are the kind of dudes you want in the locker room. These are the kinds of like Devontae Smith catching 1,000 balls before every single practice. These are the type of dudes that you bring in there that build the culture. And I think that's what you like in them.
And I think that, Gayle, you just really hit on a good point. It's the change in mentality, right? So we just locked up our franchise quarterback, Jalen Hurts. And it's been very evident since he got here that he's the kind of guy that if he could put a bed at the NovaCare complex, he would, right? He actually enjoys the work. So he's going to go out there and he's going to do his lifting and he's going to watch his videos and he's going to work on the footwork. And, you mentioned Devontae Smith and catching 1,000 passes or 100 passes every day or whatever it is. You mentioned, your AJ Browns who come in and, he goes from a situation in Tennessee where he's not the focal piece, but he's still putting up huge numbers and he goes, hey, pay me. And the Titans go, no. So he goes, okay, bye. And he comes. There's a logic now in the Eagles locker room, which is if we work hard, good things will happen, right? So there's not a superstar mentality in our superstars. So then you go to the Georgias and they've been playing in this pro style offense and defense and they have all this success and they've got their national championships. And they go to the Alabamas who have pro style offenses and defenses and have been playing for national championships. And you go and you get, first team Big East guys. And if you look at this draft class overall, you've got players who were very successful in very respected programs. And that's so big for me. And you address issues. So that your defensive line, you let some players go and you're aging a little bit. So you get Jalen Carter and you get Ajomo from Texas. Your linebacking core, you let guys go. So you get a first round, honestly, a top 10 talent in Nolan Smith. You've got one or two vacancies on your offensive line. So you're bringing a guy like Tyler Steen, who also fell a little bit, and a Sidney Brown, who fell a little bit to, fill up some of your safety because you let guys go. And Keely Ringo, because you need that depth at the corner position because, you've got Darius Slay and you've got James Bradbury locked up, but you need, when you're playing for, a Super Bowl and you've got to cover all these guys against the Kansas City Chiefs, you need more than 3 corners once you include Matt. The draft hit on every single slight weakness. And then, Johnny knows my thoughts on punters, then to get the undrafted players to get a punter into camp to challenge Cyprus a little bit because he just hasn't been good enough. I keep saying that's the one weakness still on our team, and now they're looking to address it. This team, this draft, it was a perfect 3 days for the Philadelphia Eagles.
So the other thing when, talking about Sidney Brown, they even said if he was a couple inches, like 2 inches taller, he probably would have been a day 2 pick, easy, a high day 2 pick. But of course, the size, everybody wants to go off of the measurables sometimes. But again, if you fell to the Eagles, I'm totally fine with that. Now I want to bring up the Jalen Carter, talking about, drafting him, and then everyone's saying, is he going to be a fit? Is it going to be able to be? Is it going to be an issue, a character issue? I think the Eagles are the perfect organization to bring in anybody. To me, I don't know, what you think, Gayle, but for me, when they say red flags, character concerns, all that kind of stuff, sorry, the kid's 22 years old. I know plenty of people who've done worse at 22 years old. Like, I understand the situation wasn't great. It was a stupid thing, but to say that he's going to be terrible. What's going to happen is he's not going to be able to play football because he's going to get in more trouble. I don't think that's going to be true. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a player that takes a draft, basically a slide, like Warren Sapp did. He slid down the draft board, got picked up by the Bucks.
They went to the same high school, right?
Did they? That is interesting.
Of course they did.
Yeah. Same high school.
Yeah.
Really? What about Jerome Brown? Same high school there too?
Did they?
I don't know.
No, I don't know.
Because I had a couple old heads, really old heads from, talk about, this Jalen Carter kid. Man, I could see a little Jerome Brown in him. And it's just like I didn't watch him live, so I can't really say that.
Yeah, Jerome Brown,
but
he also, the way he went out. But the thing with Jalen Carter is like, again, we all do dumb things. Is what 20-year-old doesn't go out there. A lot of kids race. That's what some kids do. But I it's unfortunate what happened with the other parties involved. And at the end of the day, it's like, all right, how does he, before everything transpired, I was like, after everything transpired, I was telling my guys, I'm like, Jalen Carter did everything for him to fall to the Eagles. Mm-hmm. I don't know what, now he's in range. And I'm like, and it's sometimes things happen for reasons. And if you sit here and relive things in your life, you're going to end up where you're supposed to be. This is the perfect place for him to be around guys who know his character, truly know his character, not Ruben. Guys who truly know his character, who have his best interests. They have nothing to gain from him. Guys like Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson, who can teach him how to be a pro. I think Keely Ringo said the most thing that is important to them when being in that Georgia locker room, and what they've entrenched in them, is that the accountability factor, not coming from coaches, the accountability that comes from the teammates.
Yep.
Where teammates can literally go to you and say, you know what, you have to do a better job. You have to, be accountable. And I think that's one thing that, when you get that pressure from your teammates and not a coach, you're like, you know what, when you play on a football team, you want to play for the next man. That's really, at the end of the day, that's how you really build a winning football team, is because you want a guy that wants to play for the next man.
And I think that the Jalen Carter thing, like you mentioned, this is the right organization. If you look at overall organizations that have been able to rehab player images, right? I think back to the way that the Eagles were able to rehab the Michael Vick situation, where there was a lot of hoopla around him and the decisions that he had made, and he had served his time. But, I'm giving up football because he did it. But he rehabbed his career and was able to be successful for a couple more seasons because of the way the Eagles handled it. I think that Jalen Carter is a really good opportunity to kind of rehab his image. But I got to point out that ESPN, what a bunch of a-holes. For them to go, and with the 9th pick in the NFL draft, here's Jalen Carter, and here's his rap sheet. They picked their opportunity to continue to slant. We all know why he fell. We all know why, but he always knew his own self-worth. So for him to go, I'm not visiting with anybody outside of the top 10. I am a top 10 draft pick. I should be a top 1 or 2, maybe top 3, but I understand. So I'm not going to visit anybody. But for ESPN to do that, for Ruben Frank to do that, it is just the ultimate. It's the most classless thing I've ever seen. He is a kid. And it is an unfortunate event, and he's still got to deal with it. He's not done with it yet, but he's now in a position, again, with a great organization that is known to rehab players, and he's surrounded by his guys. Let's not underestimate the value of them having all these Georgia players where they can go. It's the same in college as it was. It's same here as it was in college. You're accountable for your actions. There's no way he's not going to be roommates with Jordan Davis in camp. There's no way that doesn't happen.
I just feel like they have a safety net versus, they have their team, but they also have the Georgia dogs in the locker room.
Right.
There's a safety net there to also keep them accountable. So I think you love that. I do. The whole draft process and the media and the agents and the fact that the teams are also leaking information to get said players to fall. There's the whole process behind the scenes is crazy. Because one of my friends is he's an agent for a couple of these players, and the stories you hear and the way that things are set up, it's if you're it's very important for these players to get really good representation to around them. Like, again, Jalen Carter had the best. He's got one of the best in the business. While some people might not like him for being a super agent, that dude takes care of his players. And he would not put his player in a position where he's like, why am I going to subject him to all these interviews with teams that have no chance in hell getting my player? Subject him to
him with more questions.
He's like, he doesn't need that.
It's knowing your worth, right? So it's the idea of, I could meet with all 32 teams, but it kind of like dilutes my information, and it takes away some of the mystery of it. Like, if you want to have me come into your complex, trade up and let me know that you're serious about it. He was never going to be a Kansas City Chief, so there was no reason for him to go out to Kansas City other than on draft night to go sit in the room and wait. On the flip side, like Will Levis, whatever the heck kid's name is, he needs to fire his agent for putting his ass in the draft room because he looked like a joke.
Well,
he was not a first-round talent. And I got to be honest, I'm so excited that for once, because, Johnny, I've said this on our show way too many times, I feel that the NFL draft, starting right around...
This is why Levis was in the draft room.
Because of the moms and the girlfriend? Yo, what about the double butt tap? That was bizarre. Anyway, if you look at starting around late February, early March, they start pushing the quarterback narrative. So you get guys like Levis and you get guys like Hooker who they're good players. They deserve to be drafted, but they're not first round talents. They're not. I mean, I look at Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones never should have been drafted at the level that he was. There are just. And every year it happens. I mean, you saw it happen with Malik Willis. Malik Willis was put into the draft room. Oh, he's going to be great. He's from Liberty. And after 1 year, they have already gotten nope, we're done with him. So I think the quarterback narrative is really something that has bothered me. And I think the NFL for once actually got it right. Like the top 3 quarterbacks that were taken were in the first 4 picks. And that was it. Like those were the top guys. That's it.
The thing about it is quarterback is the top position that people
I get it, but you can't reach for guys that aren't top talent.
But who says they're going to be there when they pick in the second round? So sometimes teams will because of the traits and this player, the arm strength and everything that they have, the height, weight, speed, everything. You look at a guy like Anthony Richardson, he had 13 career starts, but the trait jump off the board, and a team like the Colts have a new coach who coached a player like Jalen Hurts.
Right. And all that made sense. But like Will Levis, he was never in that conversation all last year in college football.
He started to get into it towards the middle of the year. He's that Daniel Jones type with the height, the speed, can run, can throw. There's teams that are going to be looking for that. And unfortunately, he dropped to the early second round, and he went second pick in the second round. But, Hendon Hooker, if he didn't get hurt, I know his age was a little bit of a problem too, in terms of 25. But
I know the injury really hurt him.
I think the injury, if he wasn't injured, if he didn't go in the first round, I think he would have been in the second round. But he goes to the Detroit Lions, who, Jared Goff is there for another year. He's under contract for, but.
Or how about the fact that Stetson Bennett went, right? I mean, he went to the Rams where another Georgia Bulldog was as the head quarterback there. But again, they talked all the time about Stetson Bennett not even being drafted. He should be drafted. He's one of the all-time winningest quarterbacks in college football history. Obviously, he's got something right. But he's older, which, again, at the quarterback position, you've got a guy who's there. I mean, I just think that there's such an emphasis on quarterback, and I know that that's the one position, but I just really like how the NFL, I guess the way it worked this year, with everybody knowing what they needed and, just trying to get out of Howie's way so Howie could get what he wanted while getting what he needed at the same time. I mean, that's how I felt. I felt like Howie was Moses this weekend, and they just parted the Red Sea so that Howie could get all – the fact that they're like, go out and get Bijan, and he's like, no. And then Bijan goes, he's like, but I will get Swift for nothing. Yeah. Hey, Lions,
talk about that.
Lions, can you just do me a favor and pick a running back in the first round so that everybody knows we're going to trade Swift. And then, I don't know, since the Eagles are taking all these Georgia players anyway, just go over to the Eagles for nothing.
And get a Philly
literally nothing.
I mean, because I said, like, sometimes you're supposed to be where you are. The fact you get DeAndre Swift, a former Philly kid,
for nothing,
who has the most insane hype video when he committed to Georgia. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah,
because he was also because I remember during his recruiting, the Penn State was also named. So I usually follow the ones that kind of have.
You're a Penn State guy, aren't you?
I'm a Penn State guy.
Yeah. We cannot be.
Don't ask me about Sean Clifford. We won't talk about that.
But yeah, even Sean Clifford gets drafted. Like that's kind of my point.
You know who my college offensive coordinator was?
Who?
Soraka.
Really?
Yeah. This guy that recruited me. Funny guy. I love the guy.
That's interesting.
Guy.
But I think that the fact that Swift was brought. I mean, the Lions must have known that they were done with Swift because, again, they got a first-round running back. They had already got David Montgomery. They got Kutztown's own Craig Reynolds still on the roster. I mean, Swift was still the best player. I mean, they didn't even hold on to Jamal Williams. Like, Jamal Williams over there in New Orleans is over in New Orleans talking about Pokemon because he's a weird dude, but he's a productive dude. And the fact that we were able to get Swift for – I cannot stress this enough – for nothing, and we're going to have to pay him nothing. It is the ultimate victory on draft day. Once again, we got another all-pro caliber player during the NFL draft.
The thing you also like about the running back room is, Kenny Gainwell, he's giving you great value, but you add in Penny, who was actually pennies on a dollar when he's only guaranteed $600,000. And he's on a 1-year deal. Now you also bring in Swift, who's not, he's not breaking the bank either.
It's like 1.7, right?
1-year deal. So in totality, what you're gambling in this group is the same price, but $500,000, I think, more than paying for Miles Sanders. So this whole unit is around the same price for one Miles Sanders. So that is Howie being Howie.
And the thing about it too is if DeAndre Swift has a Miles Sanders type of year, plays really well, and then the Eagles lose him in free agency, the compensatory pick is probably going to be basically what they gave up in the same exact draft.
Chestnut checkers.
How is he allowed to get away with this? Like that's what blows my mind.
My favorite trade of the draft was 2 trades, actually, because it was 2 transactions, was when he traded both 7th round picks to get 191 and then took 191, which is a 6th round selection, and traded it for a 5th for next year.
You see, the amount of fists he had, I was looking at the picks. I was like, day before the draft, I was like, people are like, we don't have that much ammo in this year's draft. I said, did you see next year's draft?
Because he knows.
And they ended up taking more picks. And they ended up taking a total of 7 players, 8 if you include Swift.
Yeah.
Man.
It blows my mind. And even like a pick like, in the 6th round, they take Tanner McKee, right? Not because there's a quarterback controversy, y'all. Like, let's just stop that right then and there, But because we have the ability to develop players. And you do really need a 3rd string quarterback. And yes, you have Ian Book. But you don't know what you got with Book. So it's a good preseason arm. It's a good arm for training camp. But you've got Jalen Hurts and you got Marcus Mariota. Like, you've got 2 guys who run very similar offenses. And there's no question that Jalen Hurts is your guy because you locked them up in a very team-friendly deal that is designed to say, hey, let's go out and get more players that we need so that we can win this season right now. Like, I can't wait for all the preseason prognosticators. If the Eagles aren't these Super Bowl favorites, people are delusional.
Right now, you have to look at what they've done this offseason with the free agent signings and the draft. and what they've done, and you can't really say that because everyone. The big thing with everybody was you guys have so many free agents, and you're not going to be able to, come back and get all these guys back and retain all these guys. Plus, you have to pay your quarterback, and then you're going to have to get rid of other guys, and it's just funny because you're not really hearing that now because they've basically kind of said, "Okay, watch." Because
Jalen Hurts, like it all starts to me with Jalen Hurts, him going, yes, I deserve to get paid a lot, but I'm going to make sure that I get paid in a way that the team can still be built around me. And he actually set the groundwork for, Lamar Jackson. Like Lamar Jackson was waiting, and finally he strikes up a deal. But Jalen
worked out well for Lamar.
It worked out great for Lamar Jackson because if the Ravens had been morons, they would have let him go. Because look, I don't think much of Lamar Jackson, the thrower, because every now and then he'll throw for like 85 yards total. But then the next game he'll break out for like 537 yards. Like he's just so inconsistent. Whereas Jalen Hurts consistently, week in, week out, you know what you're going to get. And he is going to do what helps the team win. So even when people are like, well, I don't know if Jalen Carter is going to fit well with his team. Think about what Nick Sirianni said in his introductory press conference. We're not interested in schemes here. What we are interested in is building schemes around the strengths of our players. So it doesn't matter what Jalen Carter's weaknesses are. They're not going to pigeonhole him into this is Sean Desai's defense. No, it's going to be, hey, Sean Desai's defense is built around when Jalen Carter's on the field, this is what we do.
But just endless opportunities and
endless
both sides of the ball. It's incredible.
It's awesome. And the thing is, there are still, after the draft, and even Howie mentioned it, they're not done. The roster's never finished. Their eyes are out there. They have 88 players right now. So they're 90 player.
30% of the rosters from the SEC too.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. It's wild. But don't be surprised if they make a CJ Gardner-Johnson type of move. You have to look at the team and look at a few positions where they could add a veteran here or there. Maybe sign a veteran free agent as some depth. There's opportunity there. And
I mean, I'm looking at as of right now, the free agent list that is still out there, that is updated today. I mean, Leonard Floyd is still out there. Jadeveon Clowney, Donovan Smith, Frank Clark. I'm skipping around a little bit. Cameron Fleming. You've got a ton of corners, but you don't need them.
Here's the name. I'll give you one name that I would love to see them sign.
Connor McGovern.
As a veteran. I'm not sure they're going to be able to, but George Fant can play right tackle, can play left tackle, is your swing tackle, and is a veteran. That's one position I think that they should address, in my opinion, because I'm not sure how much you trust Jack Driscoll because
But I think you can trust him for some spot duty, but I think his anchor, that could use some work. But again, because you see what the offense looks like without Lane. But the swing tackle is very important, and if they believe.
You can't tell me players don't want to come to this team. When you look at the way this team is built, and
people want to come.
It's a destination place now, which is
if a veteran important. Looking and saying, "Hey, I may be able to, put in my time, everything, and I may be able to get a Super Bowl."
I think Ndamukong Suh is on the bat phone too. He's waiting. He's like, "Hey, call me after, preferably after the midseason. I'll come. Come hang out. It's that's the good thing about it. Lindo Jofus is probably like, if you need me, call."
And and going into the draft and going into this weekend, there was definitely still some positions where I'm like, all right, well, we kind of need a splash, like a big free agent, like as a backup. So, up until a couple weeks ago, people were still saying, oh, well, let's sign Ezekiel Elliott. Shush. Let's sign Kareem Hunt. Shush. We might need another quarterback. Hey, maybe Carson Wentz will come back. Shush.
I don't know who said that, but okay.
People are idiots on that Bluebird app, on the Twitter app. You know what I mean? So I think that it's silencing and kind of closing the door on certain positions the way that we dealt with the draft. Now, anything that we add at this point it's house money.
Yeah,
it's a good feeling.
I've been following this team a long time, and I don't think I've felt this great coming out of a draft in a long time. Right? There's been some drafts that you're like, but I think from a totality of like, where I felt like the team was and like the moves made sense and adding in some free agents. What you're talking about, the amount of talent that left recently, but like you lose Hargrave, right? Dude gets 84 mil. What
deserving
40 something guaranteed, but like 21 per, and then you just add a guy like Jalen Carter for the next 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes sense cap wise, and it makes sense talent wise. That's the marrying of GM intelligence and the grace of God. Like the divine football gods have like allowed these things to happen. This is incredible.
Yeah, it's
Incredible.
It's absolutely incredible, especially when you look at all the people in the front office that have left the past couple of seasons and how they've been placed in these other franchises, and the Eagles are still doing what they're doing. And you're right, this isn't, for me, I haven't seen as much Eagles football as you, but coming out of a draft, like I said, I've never felt this way either. You look at previous, really good drafts, 2002 and 2018, they didn't become that until years later after those players developed. You didn't feel what you felt with the way that they got these guys and who they got, plus also the way the team is built and what they've been doing. It's awesome.
And I'll also up that on in terms of like in organizational standards. And that if you look at the way our front office wasn't picked apart like a turkey the day after Christmas or Thanksgiving, but then they're replacing. Like I remember being at the Senior Bowl and watching, sneaking into day 3 of Senior Bowl with my Eagle stuff, thinking I thought I was an Eagle Scout, but and I'm bumping into their scouting department, and I'm like, or some of their front office people, those guys aren't even there anymore. It's and then you look over to your left, and there's Andrew Berry, who also used to work underneath Howie. So all this young talent in the front offices know that if they come to the Eagles, they have opportunity to move up the ladder. I'm a young coach, talented coach. We're getting the best of coaches. You get Shane Steichen, who comes here 2 years later. He's a damn head coach. You got Gannon, who loses the Super Bowl for it, gets an opportunity for head coach. But again, at the end of the day, it's on to the next. Brian Johnson's now in the mix.
Yeah,
Sean Desai's in the mix. There's opportunities here that people see, and they want to be a part of it. So.
Before we get into the Gannon thing, I do want to bring this up too, because I kind of call it the 49er way. When you look at these assistant coaches and also, GM candidates, of minority getting positions of head coach, and then teams getting compensatory picks off of that, 3rd round compensatory picks. Well, that's the reason the 49ers had so many darn 3rd round picks the past 2 seasons, was because they're giving the opportunities to these guys, knowing that these guys are so good. When D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh and Rand Carthen, and you have all these guys that are getting positions. And that's one thing that the Eagles, Brian Johnson is such a smart dude, and what he's able to do. I'm so glad that he got the OC position, because you can kind of see that. And potentially he'll be leaving possibly for a head coaching job. Yeah. But again, he's not going to be there forever. You don't want him there forever. You want him to keep elevating and getting better, because then that makes your team better, to then he goes off and makes himself better. Same thing with Desai. Desai had 1 season with the Bears, and then the Bears, fire everybody, because unfortunately Matt Nagy is not a very good head coach.
No.
And then he's out, and he goes with Pete Carroll to learn some more with one of the best defensive minds, in football in the last decade and a half. And then he comes over. Of course, he is a Temple alum, I believe. I think last time we had you on, Gayle, we kind of went over his whole rap sheet, how smart he is.
He's got mad degrees.
Yeah. So now he's your, defensive coordinator, potentially going to be getting a head coaching job in the next couple of years. It's kind of like the whole Penn State thing. When you look at Penn State and James Franklin, their assistant coaches usually get jobs somewhere pretty quickly, either whether it's offensive coordinator positions, if they're only like positional coaches, or head coaching jobs. It's that team. They look at that and say, okay, I have a better opportunity there. Let me go there. And that's great for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Also, I was going to say, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Oh no, I had an opportunity to shout out to Coach Singleton, gave me a tour of NovaCare, and just answered all my questions. It wasn't too crazy, but a lot of the questions he did answer. I was just like, we were talking to him about, the ability to move around the league and just how the opportunities that have been created, kind of like what we're talking about now. And he was just saying, like, he's the assistant head coach right now to Sirianni, but he said the biggest thing about the coaches that they have, he's like, they love being around each other. Like, he's like, I love coming to work. Like, these guys make it fun. Like, we like to work together. And he's like, that's the biggest thing about coaching staff that they've installed, and like the ideology behind everything, that all these people love coming to work every day. And it shows.
And I think that it does show because, you look at a guy like Sirianni who has completely embraced this entire city, right? So he loves being the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think he likes being in Philadelphia because, he's out there throwing out the first pitch, or he's out there ringing the bell for the Sixers, or he's out there. I mean, I think at this point they're trying to put him in goal for the Flyers because they certainly don't seem to have him. But he loves the environment, and I think that he's bringing people around. Like, the fact that it was kind of noticeable that him and Gannon did not get along says a lot to me because, you look at every video with Sirianni and he's got a smile on his face or a basketball on his arm or he's wearing joggers. Like, he's just like this young dude who loves the game of football, and he's re-energizing the veterans, and he's exciting to the rookies, and like, people want to be here. And you know what? Yeah, so you've got guys signing these big contracts after they've been on these 1-year prove-it deals, but that's what the purpose of those are. Like, if you sign here on a 1-year prove-it deal, the purpose of it is to go get paid somewhere. Now, CJ Gardner-Johnson, he went and got a huge deal. Kind of bums me out that he's not here, but like Kaiser White had a great season. He deserved to get paid. These guys, we knew Isaac Salamalu was going to get paid. So there's no ill will towards these guys. Whereas in the past, some of these guys were like, oh my God, like, how dare they sign with other teams? You know what? We've got the replacements in place, and good on them. Like, you feel the same way. I feel the same way about Steichen. I don't feel the same way about Jonathan Gannon. I'm going to use that as a segue. Yo, what an absolute piece of garbage human.
A little salty, much?
So for those of you that don't know, that are listening, and it has come out that Jonathan Gannon was heavily poached during Super Bowl week by the Arizona Cardinals, who eventually went and hired him. So much so that he forgot to game plan for the Super Bowl. So much so that the Cardinals and the Eagles had to come to a resolution of how much tampering they actually did. And so much so that Jonathan Gannon, the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, number one, forgot to pack socks for the whole draft week. And I don't know how many cankles you guys saw, but it was crazy. The man's, it was all the way up to his shins and his knees. He looked like he belonged in like a 1770s musical, wearing pantaloons. But he didn't even talk to the media after the draft. What head coach does not talk to the media after the NFL draft?
He's hiding something. Yeah, he doesn't.
He knew where all the questions were going to be from. He knew where they were all going to be.
Even that tweet by, the one tweet that Eagle fans approved from Chauncey as of late. Putting Gayle on the hot seat. I just don't feel like he had the players prepared.
They weren't.
And, put in the right position to win. And at the end of the day, some of the players, whether it was communication or not having known that they were going to start running these, running these little wrinkles to, affect your players and not having them prepare for that. Like that's.
I think that he's going to go. So if you think about the 2 Super Bowl losses that we've had in recent memory, there's been a culprit. We all know that Donovan McNabb has been the culprit of his Super Bowl because, he threw up on the field and T.O.'s now throwing him under the bus. And I don't see those two getting together for, the holidays. Jonathan Gannon will be the culprit of this Super Bowl loss.
Yeah. And you look at it, even with preparing for the Super Bowl, the thing about the whole after the Super Bowl, he interviewed with the Cardinals and everything like that. There, of course, like we know, there was talk before that, and he's got to see who his players are on the team. So I'm guarantee he's watching Cardinals games and watching the players that are on there and not fully focused as you should be 100% focused on the biggest game.
The Super Bowl.
It's the biggest game of this sport. So, it's frustrating. And, Gayle, I mentioned it on your show a couple days ago. You guys asked what would I think Tom asked what the home opener, what do you want to see? And I said Arizona. And the funny thing is, I think I said that before this all came out. So even more, I want Arizona as the home opener.
Yeah.
I want to sweep the leg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially.
It is what it is. Like it's like, obviously it always, I still remember that big Super Bowl L down in Jacksonville. But like these things, the pain it causes makes your team actually get better. I think you're hoping, but from the looks of it, they look determined to get back there. I mean, some of these guys who got a taste of being victorious all year, or just seeing the culture that they cultivated, and you're a Bradbury, you have all these other opportunities to go elsewhere. What makes you come back for another year? We had as his teammates at our tailgate from college that he invited, so they came by the tailgate and they're like, I was like, yeah, we're James Bradbury's teammates from college. I was like, yo, is there any way we could potentially get a Diggy discount coming back next year? And he's like, I was like, have you heard anything from? Does he love playing Philly? He's like, he said he's had the most fun he's had in a long time playing football. He loves the atmosphere, and the fact that he came back says a lot. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's fun. Can't wait. I know rookie mini camps around the corner, and then of course the schedule release is in apparently the 11th. They mentioned, so definitely see who's playing when, and be able to jot down when going to games and stuff like that.
Are you guys traveling on the road this year?
I think I do want to do one,
okay,
potentially two, but
Kansas
I do want to
City?
do definitely one. I don't know. We'll see. I may want to go up to the Meadowland. I don't know.
I'll get in my car. I'll drive up.
Yeah, but and I definitely want to try to get to a home game so we can hit the 4th and John tailgate for sure. But hey, it's fun. Football is all the time, 365. We know that. And again, Gayle, I want to thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
and
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so going to be a lot more. We're going to do next week's show on Thursday with the Sixers game on Wednesday. So we'll do it next Thursday night. Talk a little bit more about the draft and everything like that. Have Kendall on and everything. So we'll get that all squared away. But as always, thank you, Gayle. Thanks, Chip. And with that, we get a very happy and fun Go Birds.
This is Matt Ware. Hey, for all the Eagle content you need, go follow All About the Birds. They do a damn thing. Check them out.
Hey, Eagles fans, I may be in Tampa, but I know where to find the best Eagles content out there. Check out my friends at All About the Birds.
Philadelphia, what's up? This your boy Freddie Mitchell, a.k.a. Fred X. It's all about the bird.
All birds all the time.
All birds all the time.
All About the Birds provides you with weekly analysis, game recaps, informative interviews, and it's all birds all the time.